Well, my name is David S. Ware, and I was born and raised here in Scotch Plains, New Jersey. I first got started in music 1959. I took up the saxophone, and they demonstrated instruments, and I came home. And I told my father I wanted to play the saxophone. Well, actually, I told him I wanted to play the drums, and he said, "Well, why don't you play the saxophone?" And I just went with that. And I was involved in all the school activities, dance band, marching band, concert band, orchestras, Central Jersey All-State organizations, all the way through junior high and high school. I took private lessons. I even played the string bass a little bit, a couple of years in high school. And, my whole focus was around music, from the age of 9 and throughout my school years, And then I graduated high school and went to Boston and attended music school there after high school in 1967. And, it goes on from there. I had promised myself that anything that I would achieve in music, I wouldn't give this institution any credit because I really don't think they deserve any. I mean, it's common knowledge of where I went, So I'm not going to, once again, I'm not going to give them any credit by name here. It's like I said, it's common knowledge where I went, So I don't feel that it's, I'm going to follow through on what I said. I'm not going to give them any credit. The thing about me going to music school was the fact that I met very talented musicians there and started to develop, continue to develop my style, my music from there, there were some very talented musicians there that I met. And so that was the biggest benefit of going there. Well, it's a whole lot of people, Again, it's common knowledge that I was very heavily influenced and developed a friendship with Sonny Rollins. Coltrane, of course, was a very heavy influence on me. Archie Shepp was a very heavy influence. Pharoah Sanders, when I did hear him, I didn't hear Pharoah until 66. The first time I heard Pharoah actually was in 1966 with John Coltrane. Charles Lloyd. I followed Charles Lloyd very closely. Perhaps I wasn't so influenced by him, but I liked him. I liked Charles Lloyd a lot. I followed him very closely. Thelonious Monk was a big influence. I listened a lot to Monk in the early days. Ornette Coleman is another one. Ornette Coleman I was very heavily influenced by Ornette. This record, Ornette on tenor, I was heavily influenced with that. And the list goes on and on, But those are I would say are probably the major ones for that time period. Well, yes. See, the thing is about that. I'm glad you asked this question because you see, people can always take whatever music they want and they can apply it to their struggles, whatever situations that they're going to. They can take any music at all, any music, and they can say that, this is the music that goes with this struggle. And they certainly did that with Coltrane and Archie and things. But for me, that music had much higher function than political, social, even though that is important. That is important. And if you want to relate it like that, you can. But personally, I never related to music like that. See, it was always more of a spiritual. I related it more on a spiritual level, spiritual plane. The music spoke of that to me. It spoke of man's humanity and man's quest, for higher understanding. It had a more philosophical air about it than social change and all that is your social struggles, civil rights was happening all at that time, and that's very practical. That's very practical to relate it like that on that level, But I never related it like that, For me, it was philosophical, it was spiritual, it was metaphysical, It it spoke of enlightenment, It spoke of a searching, it spoke of meaning. It was a music that was searching for meaning, in one's life, uh, which is related to everything actually, which is related to civil rights also, But that's the way that I saw the music. I heard the music. Well, you see, okay, I'm listening here. You're speaking of a period here when basically I was a teenager. I'm, uh, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. And I'm not really aware of the music business. I'm not thinking about music business. I had no concern about the music business at that time. So I wasn't really, the first thing that made me wake up to the fact that, things weren't fair for musicians was when Coltrane died and they took his record company away from Alice Coltrane. That's the first legal situation that I really, took a look at, And when I say took a look at it, I mean, I just read it and said it wasn't unfair. And of course, she's not going to be able to fight it. She's not going to be able to go up against a corporation. So, that was that, But I wasn't one to follow the music business. I developed a friendship with Sonny Rollins, and about say around 1969, and sometimes we would have these long conversations, and he would say that the business is basically it's a dog eat dog world. It's rough, but he never went into any great details. I had no and I didn't ask those type of questions, to be frank with you. I wasn't at that time. I wasn't concerned about the business. I was concerned about making music, and that was my concern, just to trying to be and develop and my style. I want to know, how you get into it, and how you got into it was just to do it. That's all. You just do it, and you get better and better at what you do. And at that time, my attitude about the whole thing was very innocent. I didn't realize that in a certain way, in a lot of different kind of ways, it didn't make any difference how good you were. It was a business aspect to it. It was a business aspect to it, which I had no idea. I'm 19 years old. I don't know anything. I'm not concerned about the business. Just concerned about playing and sounding good. That's all. And way down the line, like 10 years later, when I began to play with Cecil Taylor and Beaver Harris joined the band. Beaver was the only older musician that ever told me anything to benefit me, really, about straight up business. He told me to start a publishing company. Say, David, go and start you a publishing company, and because there are musicians that are 50 years old today and don't know anything about a publishing company, and you make all kind of money through your publishing company, and you don't have to do anything from it. All you got to do is just register your tunes and, make up a name, and basically that's it. And you get money from this, you get income from this. Oh, from now on, you get money from that, And Beaver Harris is the only one who told me anything like that, practical like that. And other than that, I wasn't concerned about the business, you know. And of course, now I'm in the midst of it. I'm in the midst of it, and I'm experiencing what it is, you know. And my situation is much better than the guys that came up through the '60s, that was on the scene in the '60s, you know. And so I guess we have them to be thankful for, because they went through hard times and struggles, and some of it we don't have to go through, but it's still there. Now, as far as unfairness in terms of, for example, New York City, in terms of clubs, the Village Vanguard don't want us. Here, I'm on Columbia Records, and I can't go into the Village Vanguard not because we don't draw, but because the ownership doesn't appreciate the music that we play. Yet and still, that club was built on the music of Thelonious Monk and Coltrane and Rollins and Roland Kirk and Miles Davis. And now we are the sons of those people, and now we can't perform in the Village Vanguard, and things of that nature I have become aware of, and what can you do? That's just the way it is, That's just the way it is. That's all. It's just the way it is, And jazz in general is not recognized. It's just not recognized in American culture. It's just not recognized. You have all of these award shows, music award shows, and there's never any jazz. Very, very little. Very little. And the story goes on from there. You just, basically what it is, you're on your own. You're on your own and trying to figure out what to do and how to do in this music business, You're basically on your own. You're on your own, because everybody has their own vision of how they want to move through their own life and career, and so you basically on your own. You got to figure it out, You got to figure it out. No, I never studied with Cecil. No, I didn't. I never studied with him. I played with him. Certainly, he is really the only one outside of Sonny Rollins that I really wanted to play with. Cecil Taylor, I had a desire in the late '60s to really play with him. He was one of the people I really wanted to join that band, and I told him so, and I eventually did. I joined that band in the mid '70s, anyway, and I learned quite a bit from Cecil, but I want to say that the main thing I learned from him is a sense of how to deal with compositional forms, and to always include that in your improvisations. Work with the compositional form and build inside of the music. It's not really an emotional kind of thing, even though there's emotion in the music. There's great emotion in the music, but it was one that when I was with the band, he wanted me to develop my solos more. He wanted me to take time and to methodically develop my solos, instead of just skimming over the top. He wanted me to work more inside the structure of the music he had written. And now I can appreciate that, Well, Coltrane, Coltrane in my mind, was certainly a pivot point in the development of jazz. He's one of the pivot points, because I think one thing that he did with his genius, his musicality, he went from playing chord changes. He went from exploring the chord changes, from moving through chord changes with a I should say it with just a fluidity and a complexity, moving through chord changes to down to one chord change, dealing with one tonal point, and creating shifts within that one tonal point. And this was revolutionary, within the context of jazz. Okay, within the context of jazz, that was revolutionary. And he went on into a multi-rhythmic conception. He left the concept of a singular time structure to a multi-time structure. This is another one of the revolutions. And so combining that modal concept, basically a modal concept, and then even later on taking that modal concept and kind of stretching that into I think he kind of like synthesized that into a atonal. It was atonalism. So you have this modal basis, and you have this atonal kind of branch coming up on top of that, and along with the multi-rhythms. And you got a whole new sound. You have a whole new sound. Now, on top of that, you had him being a human being who was searching. You see that search. He was pushing. He's pushing something. He was pushing for. And basically, it was the sound of the cosmos. Basically, the complexities of the cosmos. That music was a reflection of that. That band with Rashid Ali and Pharaoh Alice himself, and sometimes a lot of percussionists, sometimes a lot of conga drums and so forth and so on. That to me, in my mind, was a reflection. It was a music that was reflecting the cosmic spirit. The complexities of the cosmos. Everything is going on at the same time. So it's a collective. It's a group sound. And they're moving as one. And that's a reflection of the music of the spheres. And the influence of John Coltrane, he he has such a tremendous influence on even pop music of the past uh, 30, 40 years of pop music, is influenced by what he did, because basically all this stuff going on today, all that too, because basically everything is in the mode, You always, to get the modern sound, you put chord changes, you figure out what mode will fit over all the chord changes. That's the thing, to get the modern day sound. And everybody is doing that. Everybody will take a tune and put it, over put it in some type of modal system. You put it basically in a modal system. You put the chord changes in a modal system. And basically, hey, I mean, all pop music is like that, just about. I mean, that's the thing that's happening with pop music in everything. So his influence is tremendous. It's beyond scope. It's beyond scope. Well, I think that's natural. That's what human beings do. That's what human beings do. They do that in all fields, not just music. They do it in medicine. They do it in science. They do it in all kind of fields. They do that. People don't want to. Basically, in my mind, this was a music that made you reflect. It was a music of reflection. It was a music that you had to sit down and pay close attention to. It demanded your attention. It wasn't background music. It wasn't dinner music. It wasn't elevator music. It wasn't music that you could talk over, And so, a lot of people didn't like that, Just speaking about Coltrane, one figure. Now, Coltrane came up playing through the bebop, playing through all those changes and stuff. And a lot of people dug him for that. And they said, as soon as when he changed, when something happened around the early 60s, somewhere in there, on into the mid 60s, when his sound changed, I said, when that rhythm changed, and he started playing over the changes, you start playing, getting into the modal, on into the atonal, mixed together there. He lost a lot of people. I've heard avid music fans say that Coltrane lost me. They say Coltrane lost them somewhere in there. They didn't know what he was doing. They couldn't understand what he was doing. See? Because for me, like I said, the way that I related the music was philosophical. It was metaphysical. It was subtle. It talked about subtle things of a subtle nature, finer nature, higher nature, and it lost a lot of people in there, critics included. They're the first ones you're going to lose anyway when you're doing anything, And, it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a long time. Perhaps one day this music will be like bebop is now, I mean, it's accepted, it's taught in the schools, maybe one day, this genre will be appreciated for what it is. Well, I've already said that it's a reflection of the music of the spheres. It's a reflection of the cosmos, of what's happening in the universe. You have all different things happening in the universe at the same time. You got everything happening at the same time. Say just on the level that what the scientists can now understand. If you look in the outer universe, just the outer universe alone for a moment, you have countless bodies going around in the cosmos, and they don't run into one another. There's some type of force that keeps everything in order. It's some type of force that keeps things in order, that keeps our lives in order, that keeps everything that's happening on the earth in order. You got all of these invisible forces. You got the force of gravity. You got the force of gravity. You have the force of some mysterious force, intelligence brings people together for marriage, to do work, destiny. People are destined to do certain things. There's, truth is, they say truth is greater than science fiction, and it is. You have, see, in the Western world, for example, in the Western world, they don't teach reincarnation, right? We don't teach reincarnation. But here's a fact. It's a fact. It's a fact. It's a fact. And if you dig a little bit deep into it, see, that is the basis, that is one of the primary pillars of spirituality, reincarnation. Okay, otherwise, why would it matter? Why would it matter what you do, right? What you develop, if there's not going to be any hereafter, if there's not going to be any continuation of life, then what does it matter? Just have fun. Just have fun. Do whatever you want to do if this is it. If your life just means that you're going to live 50 years or 75 years or 100 years and that's it forever from now on, then what does it matter? Reincarnation is one of the bases. That's what all the books, that's a pillar of their system, and all the great spiritual books that's been written, including the Bible, and Christianity doesn't emphasize it because they want to control people. Christianity is one thing that they like to control you. See, so they take out certain things. They take out certain things, so they can control you and have their interpretation as the only interpretation, which is so childish and so stupid and so, whatever. And so, see, for me, the music is just a reflection. This music that we play is just it's a reflection of unknown principles. See, it's a reflection of unknown principles. It's like, it's like, it just, you got to think a little bit. That's all. Like, for example, reincarnation is all around us. It's all around us. Everything is reincarnating. The flowers, the trees, the grass, right? Everything is reincarnating. It dies. Then it comes back the next season, the next year. It always returns. The fruit trees, it bears fruit, the fruit drops off and gets ripe, the leaves turn brown and disappear, and then the next year it happens all over again. The cycle starts all again. The only difference between man and the nature around him is the duration. That's all. It's just a different duration. So we live 75 years, 100 years, 80 years, whatever it is. We die, and all of our subtle being, the body drops, The subtle being goes into the heaven plane. Basically, that's a plane of rest. And okay, related back in practical terms, in a 24-hour cycle, you rest, right? You have a certain amount of activity, then automatically you get tired and you go to sleep. Death is the same thing. It's just a larger cycle. It's a little larger cycle, see? And so the music speaks of the music has its own it has its own order. You know, this music that we play, it has its own order. It speaks of orders that we don't usually think about. You know, it reflects orders of intelligence that is not usually thought about in the everyday world. And that's why you first hear it, a lot of people may think it's very beautiful, but a lot of people may think it's very strange. Because it's just a matter of, it's a matter of creativity. It's a matter of creativity, It's a matter of creativity, and it's a matter of just what we do is we put together you have the building blocks of music. You have rhythm, harmony, melody, and you put them together in creative orders, You put those aspects together in creative orders and you come up with a different order, And along with the desire to seek out something that new orders of sound, and see, the way that I always used to think about it is that there's a reservoir of sound. Is somewhere in the universe, somewhere in the subtle universe, which means somewhere within us, there's a reservoir of sound, untapped sound of just like pure music, if you want to call it, music that hasn't been structured. And, great improvisers and great composers, great musicians, they pull out of that, they tap that untapped reservoir, that unmanifest reservoir. They tap it, unmanifested reservoir of sound. They tap that. And they tap that and they create new music. They discover, it's like more of a discovery of new music. It's a matter of being creative, It's a matter of tapping the source of creativity, the source of creativity. And for me, my method is basically a method of meditation. I meditate in order to tap the source of creativity, in order to get to that unmanifest intelligence and to bring it back through my nervous system, through my music, through my horn, to have the horn as an extension of my nervous system. And that's my method, which I've been working on now for 27, almost 30 years now. Well, yeah, it's difficult, but the thing is about it that you have to apply yourself. And if I look back over for the past 30 years, if I look back, the times when I haven't been involved with my music, the times that I haven't been making a living off it, I didn't apply myself. Okay? I didn't have things in place. And my attitude wasn't correct. And once I started doing that, once I started having a correct attitude about it and applying myself, then things started to develop and things started to fall in place, and I started to meet people to support me, in my quest to be a musician, and to make a living from it, what I love to do. And so it's a matter of application, really, I think. For me, it has been, because I think what I'm doing is my destiny to do. So I've been clear about that. I've been clear about my destiny since I was 12 years old. And, but now over the past 10 years, I've been applying myself. And for that reason, things have come and things have developed. And things have happened. No, I don't. I wouldn't. I couldn't say that. I mean, I couldn't say that. I was generally. I can't say that they had influence on my music. I mean, or I can look at the other way and I can say that everything had influence on my music, consciously, unconsciously. I mean, who's to say? I mean, how it actually, the mechanisms of how it actually takes place. What you are influenced by, because there's so much happening on so many different levels that you can't be aware of it all. So in that sense, I suppose that they did, because I was aware of civil rights and inequities of what was going on. A matter of fact, I'll tell you a story. And when I was in high school, when we had to stand in the morning in homeroom class, when we had to stand in the morning and salute the flag and state the Pledge of Allegiance, I didn't do it, okay? I refused to say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, blah, blah, blah. I didn't do it. And for that reason, they made me stay after school and write it 100 times or 300 times or whatever it was. So I went through that as a teenager. So, I mean, I had awareness, of all the civil rights that was going down, and that's the way that I protested it, I protested it in that way, see, because the way that I played was natural for me. I would have played that way. I would have played that way, the way I play now, if everything was perfect, if there was no civil rights struggle, you see. If there was no civil rights struggle, I would still play the way I play. So no, that's where I am with that. The civil rights struggle is not a for me now is not a big consideration in why I play the way that I play. I would play that way if there was never no. If the word didn't exist, I would play the way I play. So that had no bearing on the way I played the horn. No. And in general, it did not. No. And because music is for me, music has like I said before, music has a much higher function than politics and civil rights. All that stuff is very, very practical. It's very practical. But it's also very worldly, and the music, the source of the music is beyond that. It's beyond that. It comes far, far beyond that. It's far beyond the struggles and ways of the world. Even though if you want to relate it to that, you can always relate it to that. Like I said, you can take any music from anywhere and you say this music goes with our struggle. So okay, fine. If it goes with the struggle, you think it goes with the struggle, fine. But to me, that's not what my music is about. If people want to relate it like that, it's fine. Maybe it doesn't hurt, fine. But it's above that. It soars above that. Well, I mean, I think I've already answered that question. But it's one of spirituality, basically. It's to provoke thinking, to provoke critical thinking. Okay, this American society gets a F or E for critical thinking. Okay, so I wanna induce critical thinking amongst whoever might hear it. I want to open them up to the possibilities of different orders of beauty. I want to open them up to different possibilities of their self, of their own self. I want them to look inside of their self. I want the music to be a mirror. The man in the mirror, I want the music to be a mirror. You know, I want the music to serve as a mirror for them. And for all of us, for the musicians included. And I want them to realize that life is more than what you see around you. It's more than what you see. It's more than what you sense. It's more than what you even think, you know? And to get in touch with unseen forces, unseen intelligence, deeper intelligence, and to flow with that depth, that new depth, you know, of understanding and awareness. You know, I listened to bebop. I didn't listen to a lot of bebop. Charlie Parker. I think I heard more Charlie Parker than any of the rest of the so-called beboppers. And I played his tunes. But for some reason or another, my musicality didn't seem to fall in that realm of the music. And my environment here, I'm not an up and coming musician in New York City or even Elizabeth or Newark. I had nobody. I was like the only jazz player in my community. I mean, just about, in other words, I didn't have a guitarist. I didn't have a pianist. I didn't have any chordal instruments to develop with like that. But I did have a drummer. And so my development came in and around the drums, the rhythm aspect of the music. The melody and the rhythm more than the harmony. So I didn't have anyone to lay down the harmony. I couldn't hear the harmony. I didn't know what the harmony sounded like. In reality, I didn't know what my relationship was to it as a beginning musician, And I would see chord changes and see the bebop, but I didn't have a concept of how I could deal with that. I didn't have that around me. And so I played the melody. And I just basically played off of the melody, which is certainly valid too, but I'm just saying that my concept began with me playing off a melody. And even to this day, when I take a tune, even though I'm seeing the changes, more than the changes, what precedes the changes is the melody. The melody precedes the changes, even though I'm aware of boom, boom, boom. But the melody precedes the changes because that's the way that I developed. That's the way that I develop. I developed like that, and through listening. And what just naturally appealed to me more was, the Cannonball Adderley, going back now, Cannonball and even Coleman Hawkins, and you know, and you know, I mean, Coleman Hawkins is certainly highly conscious of melody when he goes through a tune. You know, Hawk, same way Sonny Rollins is. I mean, they are essentially melody players, and I consider myself essentially. My improvisations are based off basically melody. That's, I think, melodically more than just trying to run chord changes. You know, even though I'm gradually trying to incorporate more, trying to get more benefit from each one still, each aspect. You know, well, it's hard for me to talk about myself, man. You know, it's kind of, get kind of funny when people start talking about themselves. But I believe that my band is one of the bands that jazz is still evolving with. It's not many, though. I don't believe that it's many. And, you know, he's 90-some% right. I would have to say that Archie is some 90% right in saying that. It is basically stagnant, except in a few. You know, it's basically stagnant. It's standing still, you know. It's reached and has for some time, you know, overall. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, geez, philosophically, nothing stays the same anyway. Everything changes over a period of time. Time is the element that changes everything. So nothing stays the same anyway. So everything changes over a period of time. That's one thing. Another thing is that the pop scene is so overwhelming and has been for so many years that it just overwhelms everything else. Pop music. Another thing is that musicians, if work is harder, more difficult to get, then what musicians started doing is they started playing in my mind, too many different situations, maybe just in order to get work. They say, well, I'll play here, I'll play there, I'll play here, I'll play there. In other words, they turn the music into a day gig, thereby not really focusing on their personal music. And that's the way that jazz evolves. When you got to have a group, and you got to have a study group, and that group has got to focus, and that group has got to get to know one another better than husband and wife. You know, you got to be close. You know, you got to be close. And over a period of time, you can develop a music, you know. And that's exactly what I have done and I always wanted to do. I've stuck with a study band. I don't work here. I think, you know, work here, work there, work there. I could have. I did it the other way. I made a sacrifice. I drove a cab for 14 years. And I stayed with the focus of my own music, you know. And because that's really the only thing that gives me complete satisfaction is playing my own music. I'm not satisfied playing other people's music. And for a lot of different reasons, not just musically. Philosophically, they're involved in things that I don't think is important. I can't be involved with that. Things some musicians are involved with. But I think that's one of the main reasons why, in my mind, that it's not enough study bands. It's not enough study bands that have stayed together and have developed a music, a sound, a concept that's solid. Instead, they play with 5, 10, 15 groups and everything is, okay, just good enough just to make this gig. Just good enough just to make that gig. Just good enough just to do this tour. And that's that. That's one, in my mind, that's one of the reasons. You cannot be committed to but so many things. You can't make a commitment to 5 or 6 different things. I don't see how you can do it. How can you make a commitment to 5 or 6 different bands and you don't really practice the music of any of them? It's all about, like I said, it's all about making a particular gig or a particular tour or a particular recording. And you're not really focusing in after the gig or recording or tour is over. That's it. Then, I got to do this, It's like a day gig, And there's too many cats doing that. There's too many cats doing that. I know times are hard, but like I said, you got to figure it out. You got to figure it out. I figured it out. But that's what works best for me, But I see it as a problem for the overall music. And I think that's one of the reasons why it is not moving forward. Because cats don't have, the music, is not as solid and not as strong as it could be because they don't have the focus. They're doing too many things at one time. Too many things. They're involving too much activity. You got to narrow it down and make a commitment to 1 or 2 things and go on and develop that and be serious about that and get into that, get involved in that, instead of over here, over there, over there, over there. Yeah, you're paying your rent. Yeah, you're making your rent. But the music is suffering. That's the way I see it. Well, in terms of education per se, I think that what I do like to do, I like to have more or less informal sessions where there's a question and answer type session with anybody, with students, and I have my horn and I perhaps can talk on the aspect of improvisation and what it is and that kind of type of thing. I think it's good to talk, to see what's on people's minds and for them to be able to ask the artists questions firsthand. And I've done a number of those in different universities and even public schools. I've done that in junior high schools and high schools and in elementary schools. And it's been very interesting. And I think those of us who care to need to do more of that.
I'm sorry.
I've done some of that, and I like to do more of that. Well, it's all important. Improvisation is all important. All music is improvised. All music is improvised. It's just that the focus may not necessarily be on improvisation, the improvisational aspects of it, but all music is improvised. All classical music is improvised. European classical music is improvised. It's just that improvisation is improvisation equals creativity. And You see, you might say that the master of the universe is the original improviser. Okay? You know? In other words, the base intelligence of the universe is an improviser. And everything that's happening is like an improvisation. And it's perfect. You see? That's the order of the universe. And so what we do as improvisers is a true reflection of that. Spontaneous. You know? The creator spontaneously improvises the universe. And so we are great artists or reflecting that. And so therefore improvisation is all important. I'm glad you asked this question because I have a lot of feelings about that. And in my mind, this is what I think is happening, that there are many musicians who are studied and are quite proficient on their instrument and are gaining in that proficiency year by year and care very much about that proficiency and really understand what it means to be a musician. And so therefore, they take very seriously having, for example, saxophone, a very good tone quality, a very good dexterity, fluidity, moving over the instrument, and they take great pride in being able to read music also, not just improvise music, but also read music. They take great pride in being able to arrange or compose. Then you have another class of musician. You have another class of musician also, so-called musician, who is not interested in having any great proficiency over the instrument. They have a concept in their mind. They have this concept in their mind. And as long as they can somehow approximate what they have in their mind, they're satisfied. They don't care about reading. They don't care about the intricacies of improvisation. They don't care about getting better, proficiency on the instrument, better control. They don't care about their tone. You see? And those so-called persons with the instrument, I didn't call them musicians because in my mind they're not musicians, but it's a mindset that says, oh, well, I don't need years of training. I can just do this. See, I can just start doing this. I don't need background. I don't need to understand this and understand that and a thorough understanding of basics. I don't need nothing. I don't need to have a good tone. I don't need to read. Why should I need to read? I'm a musician so-called musician who's interested in improvisation. So what has that got to do with reading? They can't put anything together in their mind. Nothing has no relationship. Oh, I just want to do this. It's like a martial artist. They see a martial artist that's been training for years and years and years and years. Oh, I want to do that. Oh, I just do that. I'm going to start doing that. No background, no training, no nothing. They just want to do what they see. And so there is this mindset that does exist. And I've had couple students that have had this mindset, and I let them go. I let them go because I told them I can't help you if you're not interested in having a background If you're not interested in knowing what it is that you're doing, then I can't work with you. I'm sorry, you know. And so there are musicians who don't have no respect for and trying to keep a high level of musicianship. And so some of the criticism is rightfully so. It's a lot of shucking and jiving here too. It's a lot of virtuosity, and it's a lot of shucking going on too. Okay, you got both things happening. You got both things happening. You know, it's not all of us that are virtuosos. You know, some of us shucking and jiving too, because it's a lot of holes. It's a lot of holes in it too. I'm gonna tell it like it is. I'm not gonna just, you know, put everybody. No, I'm not gonna put it. It's a lot of people that need to tighten up what they do. That's another reason why the music is at a standstill, because there's not enough of us that have a high musicianship. It's too many of us just floating through this thing. We're just floating through. Because that's my destiny. That's why. Because I continue to create because it's my destiny. This is what I was born to do. You know? This is what I was born to do. You know? This is what the universe has told me to do. You know, my birth designates me to do this. That's why I'm doing it. Like I said, I've known what to do since I was 12. And I just been one-pointed at it since I was 12. And I was born to do it. That's why.